I'm just introducing Cindy Laatsch. Cindy Laatsch is a guest speaker. We're doing something a little bit different for our meeting today. She's going to give a longer form presentation about leadership. Cindy is what you call a region advisor. In Toastmasters, you have clubs. Clubs are organized into areas, areas into divisions, divisions into districts. Our district is District 35. It's all of Wisconsin and the UP, so that's pretty big. And when districts need a home, they go to what they call regions. And Cindy is a region advisor for Toastmasters, which means she's responsible for one of the entire coasts of the United States as far as Toastmasters clubs. So she's learned a couple of things about leadership, and she's here to share that with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Cindy. Take it away, Cindy.
Thank you, Robert. And I did put together a slide deck more as discussion points. And so leadership is, yes, something that we can practice in Toastmasters, but really realize it's all about your entire life, right? It's about a dimension of your life that you can really choose to develop. And I learned over time that it's a verb, meaning it takes action. I have to actually do something. And so today I'm looking at how does leadership affect your head, your hands, your heart, and your habits? So on the next slide, we're going to talk about my journey. So my journey as a leader, first and foremost, I didn't know I was on a journey. Okay. I started out as a I went to college, got the job, did everything that we're supposed to do, right, in the order. And I started to work, and I was what I later found out was called an individual contributor, meaning I was part of a team. I worked and had projects that I did, and I was in sales for a while, but as the employee, I was an individual contributing to a larger team or a larger effort. And it was there that I learned what I call my 49-51% rule. And that has served me as I've kind of gone on this leadership development experiment that I like to live. And 49-51 meant to me, in my relationship with my boss, I have 49% of the relationship. But my boss always has a couple percentages more. So when there's a decision that needs to be made, when they're going to say, we're going to go this direction or that direction, the boss has 51% of our relationship. And so I need to, as an individual contributor, give 100% of my 49. Now, I could develop an awesome project, give it to my boss, and he could look at it and go, yep, that's interesting, and then never do anything about it. Because in our relationship, he has that little bit of extra. The thing that I learned as I evolved was 49-51 is very relational, meaning in my current relationship at work, I'm 51% to some people, meaning I'm the decider. But other people, I'm a 49%. So I needed to understand what was my role in the leadership relationship. And so once I understood role clarity, I could contribute more effectively. As kind of a person on a path, when I started this journey, I thought, I want to manage people. That's the next step in my journey. I want to become a people manager. And that's what we call it at work, where I work. It's a manager of people or a people leader. And when you're a manager of people, you have, where I work, you're a working leader, meaning you do your job, you're still an individual contributor, and you manage people. And that could be year-end assessments, that could be coaching, that could be guiding them, that could be supporting them through a difficult time. And as a manager of people, I realized that's a really hard job, because people really become, if you're doing what I think is a good job, you're supporting the people, you're seeking their input, you're eliciting information from them. So I always say, I work with Adam. Adam doesn't work for me. So it's kind of one of those subtle turns of a phrase. I work with my team. They don't work for me. That's how I see it. And then as I evolved in Toastmasters, I've been in for 11 years now. And thank you, Robert, for that awesome description. And then Teresa, your description of what's a club, what's an area, what's a division, because it can be very mysterious. I started to go on what I felt was a leadership journey, meaning you can be an individual contributor and be a leader of people. You can be that person that is on a team of many and you have a boss, but you're still a leader of people. And I'm a big fan of stories. And a little story how I realized, oh, this is a leadership moment. Where I work, it's a very old building built in the early 1900s. It has a long sloping hallway inside. I walked out with someone, and far at the other end, someone walked out of another door. And as they were walking out, they had books and a laptop and things. They had crunched up paper and they had Kleenex. Well, they dropped some stuff on the floor, some paper and stuff. And this is what they both did. They looked down at it and they kept walking. And as I walked up, I bent down and picked up those items, kind of put them in my pocket to throw them out later. And the person that I was with said, why'd you do that? I said, because it was there, right? Because someone dropped something and I felt it was appropriate for us to pick it up. And have any of you heard of the concept of there's poopers and there's scoopers? There's actually a business book written about, are you a pooper or are you a scooper? Meaning, and it's done in a lot of workplaces, we've done it at ours, meaning when you see a problem, do you invest in it right away? Do you jump in? Even if it's not in my description, it was appropriate for me to step in. So I like to go in and offer my assistance to not just take a problem and leave a problem. Because if we all take a problem and just leave a problem, we're going to have a lot of problems. So really ask yourself, where does my boundaries begin and end? And if it's appropriate, step in as a leader to make sure that you're picking up those things that need someone to guide them. So I've divided it into 4 concepts: head, hands, heart, and habits. And I want this to be interactive. So if you have comments you want to add in chat, if you want to raise your hand and participate, I would love that. So my first place I want to go is to the head. And as we look on the next slide at the concept of the head as a leader, speaking for myself, I can be in that thought bubble a lot, meaning I can overthink things. I can be given something by my boss and think about it, analyze it, kick it around, really work it over in my head without ever taking action. And it can take me, and I've noticed this, a while before I'm willing to move to action. I really want to get my head around it and chew on it. Well, what I realized over time was there were times that I really wanted to analyze the problem and the situation, but there were other times when I was really concerned if I took a step, I might look stupid. And I thought, if I take a risk in this situation where I don't exactly know every contingency, will I look uninformed? Will I look like I made a bad choice? And I would tend to get locked in this, you've all heard it, over-analysis, paralysis by over-analysis, meaning I'm stuck. I want to ask a question, but I don't want to look like I don't know because I'm the boss. And so I could be stuck in this constant circular thinking pattern in my head, afraid to make a mistake and kind of afraid to take a step. And one of the lessons I learned was by a team of people at Harley when I was there. We would have weekly meetings. I was new to the department and we were buying and selling Harley dealerships, which was super fun. I was new, and one thing about my workplace, I don't know if by a show of hands you guys have this, but we have a lot of acronyms where I work, right? We have a lot of, they're called TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, right? They stand for something, but I'm not sure what it is, the ERP, the XMY, the SN1 project. Well, I was new to this department, 2 months in, and we went to a weekly meeting, and the boss, and I will call him Charles. Charles was talking about the XM1 initiative, the XM1 project. And I'm looking around the table trying to figure out, am I the only person that doesn't know what they're talking about? Right? I was fearful, like, I don't know what they're talking about. So, being the new kid, I raised my hand and I said, "Excuse me, Charles, can you tell me what the XM1 stands for?" And he kind of looked at me and he told me what it was. And I said, "Okay, great, thank you." And I felt better because I was learning. And I felt it was okay to ask that question. Here's the funny life lesson I learned. Throughout the rest of the week, all of my other colleagues came to me different times and said, "I am so glad you asked that question because I don't know what that means." So they'd been sitting in those weekly meetings with their boss talking about this initiative that was letters. And they said, "We were here so long, we were afraid to ask something because we thought somebody might think we're stupid." And so I, as the new person, went, "Well, I don't know. I'll take ownership of that." That was a huge moment for me, that I asked a question, nothing horrible happened. People explained what it was, and we all moved on. So one thing that I had is, if you're living in your head a lot as a leader, you can get stuck and you can really start to lose contact with what needs to happen, who can you assist, and what are the resources you can tap. So that's the next H, that's the next thing, that's the hands in this relationship. So in the hands component, I look at that as your hands are where your tools would be. Like if you used a hammer or a saw, your hands are what helps you get the work done. Even if that's for me, and once again, I don't know about you, but I use a laptop all the time. I am typing and entering data all the time. So I had to really step back, and a lot in Toastmasters is, what tools do I already have? What's out there? If I've gone to the Toastmaster website, do I know how to use the reports? Do I know how to run the reports? What data will that give me back? What resources do I have at my disposal? And by that, I mean, there is a gentleman named Keith who is in the district, Joy, where we are. And Keith Comiskey, past district director, super smart project manager. Keith was the program quality director when I was the district director. And the beauty of one of my aspects of relationship with Keith is he's a data guy. My data expertise came with study. It wasn't natural. So I could go to Keith and say, "Hey, Keith, how do we export this correctly? What's the sort on this? How can I get back the data I needed?" He was a resource that I could use. And the beauty of having a relationship like we did is neither of us felt uncomfortable or threatened or unwilling to ask that question, because there were times Keith asked me for things that he felt I excelled at. So what tools do you have in your workplace? What tools are there online? At Toastmasters, they are constantly updating their reports. They're taking feedback from us. So Teresa, as a Pathways aficionado, could you turn off your mute and talk about how have you seen Pathways change over time? Or have you?
To be honest, my hands-on use of Pathways is fairly limited because I assist people in getting into Pathways, and that has changed over time. They've changed the landing page, they've changed how much access you have to some different things. But I know that there are actually reports out there that VPEs have access to. I have never looked at them. Instead of using any of the club reports, I've used like area director things and stuff in Club Central that indicates some of that information. So for me, on Pathways, I actually haven't used it.
But from the day, and totally get that, from the day Pathways was born for us, it has changed and evolved.
Oh yeah.
Like how you get in, where you go. And one thing that I know in the role I'm in, so I report up to the president of Toastmasters is where region advisors report. So I report to Deepak Menon last year and Richard Peck this year. And then there's the board of directors. They're more of the strategic people. What I found out is, and I don't know about you, but sometimes I see people online on Facebook kind of making comments about, I can't find things, or this isn't easy. One thing that I'll tell you is all the changes that come, or 99% of them, come directly from people making suggestions. So if you have thoughts about how something should look, how something should work, how that is where they glean that information. So don't hold back your feedback. It's a communication group, right? Don't hold back your feedback, because the Toastmaster IT group, as well as the training group, as well as the other staff members, they do take our feedback because we are the feet on the street. So we're a resource to them, right? So we're kind of their 49 and we're kind of their 51 at the same time, right? So we have great strength as Toastmaster members. So think about the tools you have. And some people never go and look at the Toastmasters International page. That's okay. That's okay. Your relationship with the information is what you need it to be. Also, think about what networks can you tap into. We have folks here that use Meetup. I use Meetup. Anyone else use Meetup? Yep. And why do we use Meetup, right? Yvonne, why do you use Meetup?
Because we figure out there's so many different platforms, and you're trying to reach that wide demography. And so we use Meetup for some things, Facebook for some things, and then we reach a different audience with each. You can't assume that everybody's going into Facebook.
Yeah, very smart, very wise. It's if you're a club leader, if you're a leader in your Toastmaster group, that's such a wise observation that not everyone uses the same venue or channel to communicate. So Meetup, I've recently started watching a show on Netflix. I will confess to you, it's called The Queen's Gambit. And it's spectacular. And it's about a woman who plays chess. And I've always wanted to learn how to play chess. I don't know if I'm smart enough to learn how to play chess, but I'm going to Meetup now to look for organizations that have common interests that would teach me how to play chess. So tap into those networks because they're out there and they exist. And do you have technical expertise to share? In our district, Joy, Teresa and Yvonne and have been area directors and division directors. So they have this technical expertise that they can share. Oftentimes people don't know of that. And so I think if you have technical expertise in the workplace, if you have technical expertise or interests outside of work, I urge you to either post, or if post on a blog, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the place to be now for connecting and really looking at each other's expertises. And what do you have to share? And I think that's one of those self-reflective statements I've asked myself in this leadership journey over time is, what do I have to share? I mean, that was always what do I have to share? I have skills in things that I feel that I might not be good in the metrics, but I enjoy and do something called Strength Finder. So we all have expertise in certain areas. So I see, Sandra, they said are you the newest member of Kenosha Toastmasters?
Correct.
Okay, so it's great to be the newest member of a Toastmaster club, because I'll tell you, you have the freshest eyes in the group. You have the freshest perspective on how the club is running, what you think of the agendas, because you have no biases. So I truly think it is exciting to be a new member in Toastmasters and share that. And sometimes that sharing can take that leadership moment of stepping up and asking the question about, can I offer you feedback? Because can I offer you feedback is a great opening question. And I think there are two answers to that: yes and no. Right? I even ask Adam, who reports to me at Harley, when I observe something, I'll say, Adam, may I offer you feedback? And at times he said yes, and at times he said no. And I've had to become okay with both of those. Now, the times he has said no to me, because Adam is also on a leadership development as well. Adam has come back around later and said, I've reflected on what we were going to talk about. Let's talk about it over coffee. So it's wonderful to have that kind of, I believe offering feedback is like a party invitation. You can say yes, you can say no, or you might not even answer, right? So really think about how you offer feedback. And the last thing, and I want to show you something that I brought a couple of my props, is, are you journaling? So do we have any people here that are journalers, or they make notes, or they whether it's on a computer? So Joy, do you write? Do you handwrite? Do you type? How do you manage your journaling?
I handwrite most of the time, but if it's something I really think it's very important, then I also have in my notes on laptop that I transfer those important things later.
Excellent. And I too, I have this journal, and my husband gave it to me, and it's a leather bound kind of journal. And it means a lot to me to take this out at times and not just write a thought I have, but write a question I have for myself, write a goal I have for myself, write a reflection I have for myself, because I might go back in a week and look at that and think, wow, I really need to work on that. But I'll tell you, as we age, I can't keep that information in my head anymore, right? I can't retain it. So I'd really challenge you, whether it's this, your laptop, consider journaling, consider how you're going to capture those concepts or ongoing conversations you have with yourself. So let's move on to the heart. The heart is where a lot of leadership work comes from, in my experience. So a couple of things you need to do. You need to learn to trust yourself. When you want to say something, trust yourself to say it. When you have a feeling about something, trust yourself, right? We tend to be taught to second guess ourselves. Trust yourself. You are your own best advisor. The other thing as a leader, whether that's an official leader with manager or a leader of people, you need to reach out to people. You need to emphasize that you're there and reach out to people. You don't want to be that person in an ivory tower. You want to be available. And I think that's really modern leadership, because back in the day, it was the corner office, right? Now it's, how am I connecting with you? And are you a servant leader? I believe firmly that as leaders, we serve others. That's how we really support the team. And then I asked myself this question. This was something I actually journaled about. What might I be holding back? And the next statement is what I was doing. I was self-editing, meaning I wanted to say something or do something in situations, and I would have this conversation back here that said, don't do that. Should you offer that? Should you offer that feedback? Will it be wrong if you say you have another idea? So my journaling revealed to me that in my heart, I was editing my own thoughts, and I needed to become more comfortable with what I felt, what I thought. And it's just that, right? It's an opinion I have. It's not a fact. It's an opinion that I'm sharing. And then this one was hard too. Be brave, take a chance. I kind of was raised as a dad engineer with 4 daughters who were in the liberal arts, right? We were all in the softer sciences, and I had a dad who had 3 engineering degrees and was a math guy. And I had to learn to be brave. I had to learn to trust my heart and trust myself enough that as a leader, I could speak my truth, because it's just my truth. And the power of a cup of coffee was interesting. I had my boss's boss at one point was sort of a hard driving boss. And people had a certain, his name was Greg, and people were like, "Oh, Greg's coming." And I didn't see that in him. I thought he was hard driving. And I thought he knew his stuff. So every morning when I worked at this place in Harley Davidson, we had a coffee pot at the time. And I'd make coffee in the morning if I was first, or Bob would make it if he was first. So I was making a pot of coffee, and Greg came down. He walked firmly. He came down with his coffee mug, his thermal mug, and he was a big coffee guy. And I said, "Oh, Greg, it's not ready yet." And he was like, "Oh, I'm going into a meeting." And I said, "How about this?" Because he worked way at the other end of the building. I said, "How about when it's done, I'll bring it to you?" And he goes, "Would you?" I said, "Absolutely." And what it made me think of is one day I was selling a dealership and I was on the phone and I needed to get something out of the photocopier. And Greg, my boss's boss, had come down and kind of saw me struggling. And he looked at me and said, "Do you want me to give you this?" And I said, "Yes." So he was willing, as the director, to go over to the photocopier and get me this piece of paper that I needed. So I said, "Of course, Greg, I can bring you the coffee." Brew the coffee, fill up the mug, put the lid on, walk down. Now I hear he has people in his office, so I don't want to be too obtrusive. So I kind of do that knock, 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 right? And he goes, "Yeah, come on in." So as I walk in, my boss is in the room and all of my boss's peers are in the room. They all report to this Greg. And as I walk in, I just look at him and I go, "Oh, here you go." And I put it down, and my boss said, "Oh, are you his waitress now?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, "Greg and I have a wonderful relationship where we help each other." And what was so interesting is this person who was so authoritative, he looked at these people and he said, "This is a really interesting example of how we need to be moving forward. If I need coffee and Cindy has it, I think it's wonderful. If she needed photocopying while she was closing a deal, I'm there for her." So we need to look for those opportunities for each other. And he looked at me and he said, "Thank you." And I walked out. And as I walked out, where they couldn't see me, I did a little happy dance. Because I thought, you know what? I took a chance and I was brave where I might not have been in the past. And I owned that moment, right? I said, "No, I'm not his waitress. I'm his peer. I'm his colleague." So as you look at those moments, don't let them pass. If it's meaningful for you, say something. And who knew it could all from a cup of coffee? And lastly, let's talk about habits. Habits are those things you do all the time. There's a couple books about habits that I'm reading, and this is currently a really good one. It's called The Tiny Small Changes. It's called Tiny Habits. And it talks about how you break down big, daunting things into tiny habits. And that brings up my point about leadership. I believe readers are leaders and leaders are readers. Meaning, if you're a reader, you're going to learn about leadership along the way. And if you're a leader already, if you have that in your title, you need to really continue to develop yourself as a leader. Look for online classes. I'm signed up for what's called Masterclass. It is a group that comes together. It's people like the head of Disney. It's the people who run big magazines, and they have a masterclass. And it has a small cost, but it's always refreshing and filling me up. The other is there's great talks on YouTube. How many of you watch TED Talks? Love TED Talks. They're so inspiring. You can watch the short ones, you can watch the 25-minute ones, but TED Talks are very refreshing. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is, we're in this unique time, right? Everybody's calling it the new normal. Use this time. This is a unique time to become something different than you were before. One goal that I've set for myself is whenever this COVID experience, whatever it is over, I want to be a slightly different person than I was. When it started, I decided I'm going to learn how to play the ukulele and the mandolin, and I'm going to read Sherlock Holmes novels again because I haven't read them in years. I want to be a slightly different person than I was when this started. So let's talk about, on the next slide, our new normal. Our new normal is is this opportunity to have this unique time, to be more than you were before. So I ask you to challenge yourself. What are you learning? We're all teachers. What are you teaching? What are you doing with the time you have? And what are you trying? What are you trying? And maybe not doing well. Like, I'm confident I won't become a chess master, but I want to learn that part so I can stretch my brain more. So look at this unique time and challenge yourself as a leader in your family, as a leader in your community. What can you do to set yourself up to be a slightly different person than you were when this started? So as we look at the next slide and we look at leadership again, leadership is a verb. It's an action word. It requires you to do something. It isn't just something you're given, or it isn't like a mantle you wear when you get promoted to manager. So these are questions I want you to reflect on in your journals. What commitments are you willing to make to yourself? What is one stretch goal you can give to yourself to complete by the end of this year? And can you believe it's already November? Right? So what is one stretch goal you can give yourself to complete by year's end? And to me, a stretch goal means I'm really going to have to work to get it. And if I don't get it, I've still stretched myself and I'm a better person. And being a leader is about internal and external work. It's about the things you can see. It's about the books you read. It's about the journaling. It's about the things we can see, but it's also about the things you can't see. The internal work you're doing, the conversations you have with yourself, the commitments you make to yourself. So as my final thought, and I actually want to read this to you because I don't want to miss anything. So on our final slide, it says, watch your thoughts. They become your words. Watch your words. They become actions. Watch your actions. They become habits. Watch your habits. They become character. Watch your character. It becomes your destiny. So congratulations, leaders. It's been a delight to be with you today. Thank you.
Woohoo! Awesome. Thank you so much, Cindy. And we have some time here for people who have questions for Cindy. I'll just throw open the floor. I don't think I really need to moderate this. We only have 5 people.
Or comments or observations or
funny
things you've had, cups of coffee you might have delivered. Joy.
Yeah. In this period, I am serving as an area director in Copenhagen. And we are a little team of 4 area directors in this country. And what I can see in those younger area directors, and also then at some other levels, especially at the club level, is that members don't really understand what are the leadership elements we are practicing in Toastmasters. And when I try to explain that it's all these officer roles and report writing and whatever, and it's all transferable to working life. I sometimes feel that they don't understand because they haven't been to so many different working places. But I have noticed that in all kinds of organizations where I have been, there are all these elements we are doing at Toastmasters. And you can learn them. And you can learn the best practices at Toastmasters. How do you have any advice how to explain it better? That what leadership are we practicing and learning?
Yeah, I actually that is such a profound question, Joy, because I had this metamorphosis moment happen have you ever been to a Toastmasters International convention?
Yes, I have been to Las Vegas once.
Oh, I was there too.
Wow.
So I was actually in Washington, D.C. When this happened. And, so much of the event focuses on contest, winning, contest, quarterfinals, semifinals, winner, international speaker. And that had happened. And yay, that. And then I was sitting in the board meeting briefing and then sitting in the election, where these people who had worked for a year to become an international director or the president had worked for a year. And I was sitting there and I literally, like, it went boom, it blew up my head. I was like, wait a minute, the contest experience is easy to see, right? You have winners, accolades, yay, but the communication aspect of what we do culminates in winning a contest. You can see that, right? The leadership aspect, if you take it to its fullest extent, is you come out of your club, you serve as an area director, you keep, I look at it as you keep climbing up this mountain and you keep seeing there's more to the mountain. So now I'm serving as a region advisor. And although I live in the state of Wisconsin, which is in the middle of the US, the districts I support are all on the West Coast, in California, Utah, Sacramento. And my practicing leadership, I call it like it's a petri dish, like in science, right? We used to do little experiments. I experimented with leadership because I never managed 2,800 people in my workplace. But when I was district director, I could step into that role. So the story that I like to tell people is Deepak Menon, who was the president of Toastmasters last year. He wasn't the Toastmasters of the president of Toastmasters before that, right? He got the work, he read the material, he counted on his peer group to develop. I was never a region advisor until last year. I had to take a leap of faith. And like, it's like stepping off the mountain. I had to step off and go, I think I can do this, right? So the way I explain it is there's two tracks. One you can really see, one you have to look to see. The speaking track is easy to see. You have winners, you have contests. The leadership track is there and it's the board. It's running for the board. So if you've ever run for a club officer role, it's like international director is that on steroids. So I just kind of tell them that they're parallel paths. And plus one thing I will tell you, there are people who will never come out of the speaking path. Never. Right? Because they like that competitive advantage. But you learn different things when you're in the leadership path. And you're exactly right. They transfer so cleanly to work, to life. But I think for me, I just started to be able to tell the story of how they're different. But I remember I was sitting in a board meeting. I think I was either Las Vegas or Washington. And I went, wait a minute, this is like a contest for speakers, except it's the leadership path. Yeah, super good. Yvonne, you had a comment or an observation.
Oh, I was just going to make a comment about when I was younger. I was in my early 20s and I got a job in a Fortune 100 company. And I started out as file clerk, typist, secretary.
Yep.
And the guy I worked for was the head lawyer for the company. So I learned a lot. And because of that experience, I went to law school. And in the same company, it's interesting when you go from one level to another level and you keep getting higher and higher. And I would go to meetings and I would be afraid to say anything because I thought I was going to sound stupid. And everybody's going to say, well, you know, what a dumb question she asked. And I would sit there. Or sometimes I would ask the question and they just went right past me, right over my head. And then about 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, a guy asked the same question and everybody jumped on it and thought it was the best idea ever. So those are all, I was just reflecting on my management growth and how you don't know what you don't know when you're that young, but over the years you gain experience and you trust yourself just a little bit more.
Right. Oh, I so relate to that looking over you in a meeting or bypassing someone. So it's all about taking, right? I had to get over myself of saying, I may ask this and I may look like the dumbest person in the room because maybe I should know it. But when I started, and it's funny, I'm in IT now at Harley Davidson. I'm not an IT professional, but they needed communication expertise in the role I'm in. So I work in a deeply technical thing. And in a meeting, I said, we had Harley Davidson Financial Services, they're the bank aspect. I asked a question about why this happens or what happens. And everybody kind of stopped and they answered the question. And privately, one of the people who was from the other company, Harley Davidson Financial Services, he actually sent me an email later and he said, you know what's so interesting about the way you see things is you're new and you're fresh and you're willing to ask the questions that I've wanted to know for years, but felt I should know already. So it's wonderful to be someone who has a fresh view, a fresh observation. And you know what? I guess, Yvonne, to your point, if people don't listen to you the first 20 times, maybe it's going to take 20 more.
Absolutely.
Robert, how are we doing on time? Sandra, did you have a thought, an observation?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Leader. So you said that you are in a mastermind group for your own development.
Yeah, masterclass.
Masterclass.
Yeah.
So what recommendation would you have for self-development for people who are kind of the boss, so to speak?
So
there's a different mentality that goes with that than being an employee.
One of the things that, and I've kind of gone through the spectrum, right? I was like you, Yvonne, I started kind of on the ground floor and kind of worked around and worked my way through. And what I found as when I became the leader, what my boss tended to want me to focus on was technical expertise, which kind of, it's like a balance, right? I needed to learn to balance the inner workings of my job expectations, which might be classes from Microsoft or whatever, with personal development. So for me, I always seek masterclass. I found great learning in the concept of Strength Finder, or if you've heard of the DISC profile.
Yeah.
Or if you've heard of Enneagrams. Enneagrams, to me, when I learned that concept, that was life-changing. Or Myers-Briggs. So I tend to, at work, do the stuff I need and want to do to develop. We have a corporate university, but for me personally, I look at leadership development and strategic thinking. That is a big one that I'm really focusing on. Is I think we can do good work. I think a lot of people are very task oriented, like they like checklists, but I think there are times when I need to stop that kind of thinking. And I look for things that challenge me strategically. And I found that in this group called it's a master class. It's an online experience where you pick the subject. And I found that I've really focused on leadership, my personal experience, strategic thinking, and then looking at how am I better? How do I make myself better through my own self-awareness to be a better leader of others? Because like back in the old days, you just kind of bossed people around, right? You just kind of told people what to do. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, it's not that way anymore. It's collaboration. So I've looked for strategic thinking. The other thing that I've really focused on is, and I even brought the book as a prop, was how do people function in change? I think change, and the word is change management, but if you can assist people through change, if you can assist people, there's that continuum of, I hate it, I never want to do it. No, it's like Keebler-Ross, she wrote the 5 stages of, accepting death, right? That's a lot like change, right? We hate it, we're not going to do it, we're going to bargain with it, and at the end, we finally accept it. The other thing I've been focusing on this past year is managing change. And managing change to me is a lot like being a surfer. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what wave's going to hit you. But if you have skill, if you have self-awareness, you kind of have that surfboard that allows you to kind of ride the wave. And I think that by remaining calm, taking classes that developed me personally and my self-awareness, if I can have that, then I can really provide a better support system to the people that work for me. And I'm in a unique position in that, at least it's unique for me, it's a first in my life. I have a lot of people in the US that work for me and a lot of people in India that work for me. So what I've also had to do is a lot of cultural learning. And I think the more global we become, right, through this the more cultural awareness you can have. And I actually have done some cultural training online, and it allows you to have a more open approach to others, because, you know, we can get funneled into what our experience is. So I would just say continue to develop yourself, look at change, strategic thinking. That's kind of the 3 legs that I really have been focusing on.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Can I throw something on that, Cindy?
Robert.
As far as the leadership aspects of things, and, you know, kind of for the people who are the boss, you know, obviously I do web development, so I'm just me. So I really don't have any employees. It's a different, and I know it's a different dynamic, but I can just speak to being an area director in Toastmasters and being a division director in Toastmasters. It's interesting because I've been involved in organizations where, you know, you have the person who is your supervisor, and I mean, in some very real sense, they are in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership in Toastmasters is kind of different. I tell people I'm the division director, and they're like, "Oh, so you're the one in charge?" I'm like, yeah, that's kind of not how that works. I'm the one of the things I learned how to do relatively well as a division director was apologize for things that I really didn't have control over, but that somebody needed to take responsibility for. So it's an interesting dynamic, because your job is to lead these people, but you don't really have authority in anything like the conventional sense. You kind of have to motivate them to want to help you. And it really gets interesting because the interpersonal dynamics, I keep saying this with Toastmasters to my area directors this year. I'm doing division director again this year. I keep saying this to my area directors, and sometimes to the people above me. I say, you know, there's something underlying these numbers that you're seeing on the dashboard, because there's some sort of personal dynamic that's making this happen. And the information that's always the most relevant to how a club or a group or whatever is doing is the stuff that nobody is going to tell you until you start developing the relationship and you get a little bit deeper. You know, I've talked to some clubs where there were some interpersonal dynamics that just, you know, nothing made sense until we got a few people on the phone. It's like, oh, that's what's going on. Yes, it's all so clear to me now. But it's the challenge where you can just say, you can do one of 2 things. You can either say these people are idiots, which, you know, hey, cool to you, or you can, you know, dig and try to find it. And I found that the process of doing that in the volunteer capacity in Toastmasters is a really valuable experience. Like I said, I've never been a formal supervisor at a workplace, but I gotta envision they're 2 completely different things. And the second one the volunteer capacity would help in the formal capacity, because it would have you looking out for things that you wouldn't have any reason to be looking for otherwise.
Oh, very good observation about, and so in my role at Toastmasters, I'm at a global level looking. So when you're looking at your club dashboard, that's your club experience, right? Well, I'm looking at the global experience. So when you go to the Toastmaster website and you look at all those numbers, well, the numbers, they're just numbers. There's people, to your point, Robert, behind all of those. There's people with struggles, with hardships, with challenges. I've had a kind of a challenging year this year, and it doesn't show in the numbers per se, but I've had personally impacting situations that affected the choices I made and the work and having to take a leave from work. So you're right. And this is another book that if you haven't read it, it's backwards, but it says Start With Why. It's Simon Sinek who writes the best, and you can read these, they're so good. Start With Why is, and I love it. It says Start With Why, how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. And I think that's very much what Toastmasters is. When I was serving in the district leader role, I realized that you can't tell people what to do. You can't say, go out and start a club, but what you can hope to do is influence people's behaviors through your behavior. So they do things they didn't even know they wanted to do, right? So they challenge themselves to step up by watching the influence you have. So you all have incredible influence on people. Someone is always watching you. good or bad. And I speak from experience, right? Someone's watching me on my bad days, and I hope someone's watching me on my good days. So think about the impact and the influence you have over people. And the other thing is, I love the saying, take the high road. There's so much less traffic up there, right? So when you're in those moments where it can really pull you in, really consider to take the high road, because there's a lot less traffic up there and it's a good place to be.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's 1 o'clock here and I want to be respectful of people's time. I know that Yvonne is in the middle of calling people and kicking their butts to get out and vote, which is important. So yeah, we'll let you all get back to your day. Thank you so much, Cindy, for presenting. And there will be a recording of this, assuming Zoom did things properly. So we can refer it to other people. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Robert.
everyone.
Thanks, Cindy.
Good to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.